When I was around 7, I started to spend the night at my grandma's house until I was about 11 or 12 years of age. My uncle lived with her at the time and always said that he thought the house had a few ghosts hanging around. I never really saw or heard anything to care enough about his ramblings until this one night. I was sleeping in my grandma's bed and woke up to use the restroom. It had to be around 3 a.m., and I was the only one up at the time. She always kept the bathroom light on for me so I could see where I was going. I went in and started to do my business, when out of nowhere, I started to hear what sounded like many voices rapidly speaking in a whisper all around me. They were speaking too fast to understand what was being said, but it really freaked me out. As soon as I finished up and left the bathroom, it stopped. I just jumped into bed and eventually fell back asleep. It never happened again. This other time I fell asleep in the living room. The only light was the one coming in from the street through the blinds. I was sleeping on the floor and felt as though someone was watching me. I opened my eyes just a little bit and saw the silhouette of a man standing over me. He was bent over, staring me right in the face. Except this thing didn't really have a face of its own. I couldn't see eyes or the sockets. Just black. I was so scared but felt like it didn't notice that I saw it. I just closed my eyes and tried to fall back asleep. After a few minutes I opened my eyes again and it was gone. The weird thing is my grandma's house has hollow floors and you can hear when someone is walking from one side of the room to the next. But whatever it was didn't make a noise, and the silhouette of this thing looked nothing like my grandmother or uncle. Plus my uncle's not a creep and would never hover over me like that. But it had a silhouette of an older man, wearing suspenders, and at the time, I felt scared, but I didn't feel like I was in any danger. I know my great-grandfather used to wear suspenders all the time. I wonder if it could have been him. My grandmother would always tell me not to believe in ghost stories, that it was devil stuff, so I never bothered her with any of this information. Last spring I was laying in bed sleeping. It was me and my boyfriend Jason. I had a dream that I had woken up and looked out the window. I saw a lot of stars in the sky and was thinking about how odd it was then. They all started moving and getting bigger. I woke up from this dream and tried to go back to sleep. I was stuck in a state of being awake and not being able to move or speak. And something was in the corner of our room watching us sleep. I could see it in my mind sitting on a pile of clothes. It knew I knew it was there. I stayed like that for I don't know how long, but the next thing I remember was Jason's alarm going off. I woke up and looked where it had been. The clothes looked like they had been sat on. That day we found out we had left our front door unlocked the whole day before. I used to live in a village called Hilton, which is in Cambridgeshire. It's an extremely old village with a really old church and graveyard. The church was located in the smack middle of the graveyard, surrounded by all the graves, and then on the very outskirts of the graveyard was a 6-foot stone wall. Running through the middle of the graveyard was a gravel path. This path was one of the only ways to get from one side of town to the other. So essentially, you had to go through the graveyard if you didn't want to take the long way around. My buddy and I were out walking around late at night, around midnight I would say, and we were heading back to his parents' house since we were crashing there for the night. We decided to cut through the graveyard, which the graveyard is lit up at night, very brightly as well. So my buddy and I are cutting through the graveyard, and we were shooting the shit, when we noticed a lady standing at a grave towards one of the corners of the graveyard. My buddy and I looked at each other, and chit-chatted for no more than 30 seconds, saying that it was creepy for her to be standing at a grave in the middle of the night. When we looked back to where she was, she had just disappeared. There was no way, in that 30 seconds, that she could have got out of the graveyard, or even behind the church and out of view. She straight up vanished. So we walked over to the grave to see if it was a newer laid grave, but it wasn't. It was from the mid-1800s. The only thing we could conclude was that this was a spirit of someone visiting the grave of the person buried there. It was a gentleman that was buried there, and she was a female, so we figured it must have been his wife, or daughter, or something of the sort. But it was creepy as hell, and we avoided the church at night for a good while after that. This all happened a couple of days ago to me and my girlfriend. We were house sitting for my girlfriend's dad, who was out of town. My girlfriend's dad lives in a rather large house in a suburban neighborhood, just outside one of the larger major cities of Denmark. What I'm trying to say here is that this neighborhood isn't exactly scary or dangerous by any means, which only meant that this gave us a bigger scare than it probably would have had it been in one of the more dangerous parts of town. After coming home from buying groceries and stacking up on necessities for our weekend stay in his house, and later on eating our dinner, we went to the living room to lay down and have some quality time for ourselves, which we hadn't had in a long time. Now, before I go any further, let me just clarify the lay of the land here. This house has a rather large living room, fitted with windows all around, and a floor-to-ceiling window at the end of the room. Outside this floor-to-ceiling window is a sensor-triggered light system. As we laid there, just minding our business and watching some TV, I get this weird feeling that something is watching me. At first I just shake it off, like it's no big deal, thinking to myself that it's probably just because I'm in a new house, where I do not yet feel entirely at home. But as I look to my girlfriend, I see that she too is quite shaken up about something. After a few minutes of silence, she asks me if I have the same feeling as her, like someone is watching us. I try to play it off as nothing and tell her that I will just go grab a cigarette and check if there is anything out there, just to make her feel safer. As I turn my head towards the floor-to-ceiling window leading to the garden, I notice that the lights are on. Now this shakes me to the very core, and I quickly decide not to go out for that cigarette. By this time I feel my girlfriend's hand squeezing my arm. As I turn around to her, I see her pointing at one of the windows, and outside is a silhouette of a person. My blood freezes. I've never tried anything like this before whatsoever. I've always just read these stories for fun, and never thought more to them than just stories for amusement. I turn around quickly to grab my phone, and as I do, the person disappears. I call my parents as I know they were out at a friend's house, not far from where we were. My dad is quick to tell me to lock all the doors and close all the windows, and just sit tight and wait for them to arrive. A couple of minutes go by with nothing happening other than me trying to get my girlfriend to calm down, as I know how this affects her blood sugar levels, and I would rather not have her seizure out whilst a creeper or burglar or even a murderer is walking around outside the house. The silence is then broken by the sound of one of the windows being tampered with. At this point, I'm trying real hard not to freak out and cause any further panic in my girlfriend, but luckily I hear my dad pull up outside the house. Never have I been in such a hurry to get out of a house before, and I would rather not try it again. My girlfriend and I have since discussed who it might have been, and have come up with a few possible suspects. One of them being my girlfriend's crazy mother, who is rather mentally ill. The other, more possible suspect would be just a simple burglar. I really do not care myself who it might have been. I'm just glad that whoever it was didn't get any further than they did. So whoever was outside, let's not meet. It was a cold night. And when I say cold, I mean cold. I'm used to it though. This is a daily routine for me. Waking up at 6 a.m., going to my girlfriend's, spending the entire day joking around, then leaving at midnight. This night was different from the others though. Every time I would take a step and feel the snow crunching beneath my feet, I would hear another faint crunch in the snow not far behind me. It's as if someone was trying to match my footsteps so that I wouldn't hear them following me. But they were a second off. I quickly turned to see nothing behind me, so I shrugged it off and kept walking. This went on for about 10 minutes. I'm fine with walking home alone at night in the cold. The only thing that truly scares me is that I live in a small, quaint town, and the nearest house from where I am at right now is almost blocks away. If something were to jump out and attack me, no one would know till morning. Again and again, I checked behind me to make sure no one was there. My house from where I am is only about 3 blocks, so I'm almost home. As I checked again behind me, I froze. This chilled me to the bone more than the blistering cold that was surrounding me. There, at the end of the road, was the silhouette of a man. He wasn't moving, he was just standing there, motionless. Like the dumbass I was, I called out, "Hey, can I help you with something?" There was a chilling moment of silence. Then he charged at me from the other end of the street with incredible speed. I turned and ran as fast as I could. I can hear the sound of snow crunching behind me faster and faster. He's got to be right behind me by now. I stopped and turned. He was gone. I quickly sprinted home. I walked up to my front door and opened it. My parents were in the living room watching TV. I sighed with relief as I took off my coat and closed the door. I plopped on the couch and started talking to my parents about what had just happened. They said I was crazy and paranoid, that the cold was just messing with my head. I think they were right. I might be sick. As I was watching TV for a while, I saw something at the corner of my eye. I looked to the window of the living room to find the man standing outside my window. I heard